And we'll go ahead and move into our Standards and Assessment Committee report. We'll turn the time over to Committee Chair Scott Hansen.
Thank you. And I'll ask staff to be on alert because it has been 2 months now since we had this meeting and we're reporting on it. So I may need some help if there are questions, but we do have an action on item 3.4. That's the alternate achievement standards review process for students with significant cognitive disabilities. The motion for the committee, if I can get to that page here. The motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approves the alternate achievement standards revision process draft 1.
You don't need a second for committees, right? We have a motion on the floor that the board approves the alternate achievement standards and revision process draft 1. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Go ahead, Chair Hansen.
Next item is item 3.5, the school counselor to student ratios plan. The motion for the board is that the committee moves that the board approve the school counselor to student ratio plans submitted by the LEAs who do not meet the 1 to 350 ratio requirements, draft 1.
It's not on my list. No. We have a motion on the floor. I do not have that one on my list. Chair Hansen, will you repeat it for us, please?
I'm sorry, so this is item 3.
Sorry, I see it. The
Item
committee
3.5.
moves. Yeah, we have a motion on the floor that the committee moves that the board approve the school counselor to student ratio plans submitted by LEAs who do not meet the 1 to 350 ratio requirements, draft 1. Those in favor?
Wait.
Any discussion? Chair Lear?
Just member. But yes, Scott, can you tell me how many LEAs how many of those did not? Maybe this was in the backup that I didn't see.
Yeah, we may have to go back to staff to get that detailed question answered. But the LEAs, there were several that didn't meet that, a lot of that due to influx of students. And so they have to put a plan together to say, we'll add this many heads of, school counselors to meet the correct ratios in the next year or two, I think. But I don't know how many there were specifically.
Member Hutching just said there were 5, and I
Is that
just
right?
didn't
5?
find that.
All right.
I just wanted to make sure there weren't 55, but
Thank you.
5.
No,
Thank you.
and we reviewed those in quite some detail in the committee meeting
Good.
to make sure those were reasonable explanations and reasonable plans.
Good, thanks.
Thank you. Board Member Hymas?
Yeah, to your knowledge, was there any problems with coming up with plans? Any LEAs that said, we don't like this process?
None of them said that directly to us. There have been some LEAs who've been through this process several times where they've, gotten behind on their ratios and had to come back up again. But I can't speak to intent or attitude about that.
Do you know if it's in that they've been on several times, like multiple years in a row, or is it something that quite easily is fixable?
And we may need to get some comment from Shion. Okay, I didn't see her here. Christy, can you help us with that?
Oh,
Camera keeps going to the
Yes, we
top.
hear you. Go ahead, Christy.
okay, perfect. You heard my cries of frustration. Thank you. So yes, as far as the LEAs that have been on the report or having to be required to submit a report, we have had some fluctuation. Some of our LEAs that have had rapid growth tend to have to submit more plans. I couldn't speak to that in detail, but over the last few years, that tends to be the trend.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Board Member Norton?
Yes, I was just wondering if you've heard from LEAs about difficulty in getting people even to apply, and if anything can be done with our higher ed to maybe get more teachers or more students into these skills, or is that not really a problem for others? I know these smaller schools are having,
I think Christy can comment probably in more detail, but I do know some of the schools came up with situations where they had a part-time counselor come in, or they were using counselors in training from the universities, the local universities. So there is some creative work being done to try to fill these spots and make sure that our kids are properly served.
okay, thank you.
Did you want Christy to address that, Chair Hansen?
I can't see if she's raising her hand, but she probably
Christy,
can
do you have
fill
more
that out
to
in more
add on that
detail.
question?
I'm happy to comment, yes, and excuse me for not introducing myself sooner. Christy Walker, Safe and Healthy Schools Coordinator here at the Utah State Board. There is a shortage overall of mental health professionals, including our school counselors across the boards. And so we are seeing some LEAs that have expressed frustration with being able to find and also sustain those positions. One attempt at remedying that situation has been the Grow Your Own Teacher to Counselor Pipeline Program, grant program from last legislative session. And so we are looking directly at the number of students in programs, the current field as a whole. We're in conversations with the Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health to look at school mental health services holistically, which includes school counselors. And so I hope that answers your question, maybe gives you a little more information on what the hiring pool looks like.
You have a follow-up? I don't, thank you. Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, we have a motion for the board. The committee moves that the board approve the school counselor to student ratio plan submitted by LEAs who do not meet the 1 to 350 ratio requirements, draft 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Go ahead, Chair Hansen.
One more final motion. This is on item 3.7, USBE recommended resources. The motion for the board is that the committee moves the board approve the resource vetting process, draft 1. I think we had one on it.
Okay, so we have a question for that motion. Well, first of all, we have a motion on the floor that the committee moves that the board approve the resource vetting process, draft 1. Board Member Earl?
My question is, there's, one thing we don't have on there is the UEN, and I know they're not in our control, but they kind of are in our control. We send resources up there and different things, and we send our teachers there. So, and I asked Patty just if, I just mentioned to her if she could share how they go about vetting things on there, and then I wonder if there's some element of, I don't know if somehow to let district, and this may be obvious, districts should vet those materials before using, because they have not, I don't know, Patty can speak to the vetting of it, but there's great variable of it. There's a wide variety of resources up there that I think maybe we would not be posting on our site. So that's the question, but they're education-based, so.
So board members can understand the, kind of the crux of this item was that we were looking at the information and resources that go out from USBE to the LEAs. And those come in various forms and formats and through various routes. So we compiled a list of those things, or had staff compile that list of things and then talk about the vetting process for each. Who would approve something before it goes out, and came up with a process that's similar to how we handle some of our other materials that come through the Standards and Assessment Committee. But there'd be a process where materials are vetted before they go out, just to kind of systematize, I guess, that, and make sure that we understood how that flow worked. So Jenny's question is to the UEN network, which is outside of that process. It doesn't go directly from USBE to the LEAs, but it is a source of information from LEAs, and sometimes materials go up from us to UEN
Yeah,
and then
that's-
back down. And
Yep.
so Patty can comment more.
Chair.
Dr. Norman, please.
Okay, I'm Patty Norman, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement. Thank you for the question. It's a good time to update on what UETN is doing. So in the past, UEN had a template, a tool that teachers could go into as long as you had a cactus number, or, USBE could also go in and they could create lessons. It was a lesson creation template. And with that, in the past, that is something that we've done. As of this year, that is no longer being used. There's a new tool now that's the eMedia tool, and that eMedia tool has the new high-quality instructional cycle that is embedded within it, and it'll be night and day different. It'll be more colorful. It'll be on there in a new way, so that you'll see the old template and the new template. About every 2 years, specialists would be notified by UEN and Laura Hunter or one of her colleagues to be able to say these resources aren't being used or are these updated, and then USBE specialists could go on and vet those in a way of saying is this updated or not, and take some of those resources off, although they weren't all of them that weren't our resources to begin with. So the new way of doing it is going to be that only if you have a cactus number can you now contribute, and it will be that new template that will be on there. Anyone can view the lessons that are posted. So everyone will have access to the lessons, but you may only upload a lesson if you have the cactus number moving forward. Now, again, with any vetting process, if anything's on there that is objectionable, then of course people can be alerted and another process can take place of vetting through those materials. It could be, but USBE doesn't man that process. And so that's, let me know what other questions you might have.
Yeah, that's good. Do you know what the process is? If, let's say, public had a concern over some materials on there, what would that process, they would contact someone at the UETN? How does that process, what does that look like?
I know that in the past, when there has been objectionable material, then they've either alerted staff here to be able to say, is this objectionable or not, or, does this fit the vetting process? But most of the things on there, I'm going to answer your question in a different way. I don't think there's a process that is as thorough as what we have here at USBE. I think their new process in reviewing materials will be much more clear moving forward. Possibly we could ask them as our partners, and with some of, I'm sitting on the board, as sharing with them this resource vetting checklist as well. But I do not think it's as clearly aligned as what we have here at USBE.
Okay, thank you. That does answer my question.
Thank you. Board Member Klein?
Okay, so if I understand correctly, we are voting on approving the process, right? But this to me doesn't look like a process. It just looks like a list of what's being vetted and what's not. What is that actual process for vetting, and what is the criteria for it to pass?
Yeah, if you
I know
look
that-
at the materials, I'm sorry, Chair.
Go ahead, Chair
Yeah.
Hansen.
Yeah, if you look at the materials, the vetting process just shows who's vetting the various materials, and we haven't had that in the past. So now we've got a list of resources, we have a list of how they are vetted, and that is the process. So those materials are vetted by staff or by director level, or they go through the board, or whatever that process is.
So I guess my question, if I can ask, is what is the criteria for it to pass the vetting? I know at one point there was a document attached to the standards and assessment material, I think Jenny created, with a list of Utah laws that they could go through and say, does this meet this law, does it meet this law? To me, that's a process, that a kind of a rubric that it has to pass
So
in
Patty-
order to be
Yeah, Patty,
approved.
do you have that rubric that we can pull
Is that
out?
what's being used?
Yeah, I do have the rubric, but my eyes cannot see that number that's up there. Okay. Okay, in speaking to the resource vetting checklist, there is a checklist that has seven pieces of criteria that go along with it that we have right now, and Dr. Thronson is going to be bringing that up. And Dr. Thronson, can you speak to how that works now with your team and the process going through?
Don't have to get too close. Jennifer Thronson, Director of Teaching and Learning. So for the checklist that we'll go through, it has the questions such as, does it follow or align with code, law, policy? And so our staff would know which code, law, and policies are relevant to their standards or their area of concentration, and they would reflect on those and the resource to see if it's in alignment or not. So that's, if it's in alignment or not, would be marked yes or no. If it marks no, it would be a resource that would go off the table as an option. Any singular no of the checklist requires it to no longer be a resource that we would allow.
May I ask, is that rubric available for us to view and the public as well?
Yes.
Will it be posted somewhere for the public?
It is on our website, and we're going to try.
Would have been in our 6-4 meeting backup, probably, if we can pull it from back there, right?
We're almost there.
I think we're all scrambling.
Do you have it? Wait, where did you have it? Word? Nope, Adobe.
Yeah, Adobe.
Okay, so this is the resource vetting checklist that we use as a staff across the agency when we're looking at resources and whether they are appropriate for recommendations from staff. So based on the board's approval of this checklist. So review criteria 1, alignment with current statute and policy. Does it break the law? If so, obviously something we don't want to share. Alignment to standards. Is it appropriate for the course standards or the grade level standards for that particular area? Does it align with research and the evidence base that we have related to that content area as well? Then you've got the next 4, accessible without bias, limited or no advertising or political interest, so that neutrality that we've been talking about, as well as this opportunity which comes down, I think it's the last one, access to resources that don't require sharing personal information, that you don't have to log in to get access to the material. If it requires someone to give their email and things like that, it would not be a resource we would recommend. And then the middle 2 are accuracy. Is it information accurate, mostly accurate, or grossly inaccurate, and then developmentally appropriate, making sure, given the age that you're recommending this document for, is it appropriate for that age span? So that is the checklist that we use specifically to decide, is this a resource we would share? And we also have a disclaimer that says to the LEA that this is just being recommended by staff. It doesn't represent the board's official endorsement of these materials, and the educators are still responsible to ensure that their LEA following their local policies and directives. So there's a disclaimer that goes out now with any resource that we share to kind of reiterate, this is not the board's position, this is staff sharing, and you at the local level need to make the decision if this is appropriate.
Director Thronson, might you restate where that can be found?
It's on
For
our
the public?
website. Finding that.
Where can you drill down a bit for us?
Let's see. I always pull it from our employee handbook, so one moment.
And while she's looking, I might just comment if I may, Vice
Please.
Chair. So this rubric is subjective in many ways, but it does give us a framework for discussion. So if there's material that's out, it's been through a vetting process, people here at USB have said, hey, this is okay per our rubric, and then we can discuss those specific items if we feel like there's something that's out of line. But it really guides our discussions, I think, and helps us to understand, how to go forward with this.
Okay. And may I?
Thank you.
Follow-up.
Yes, quick follow-up.
Does that account for all of these different areas, including listservs and emails?
Everything on that list
Okay.
that says it's vetted is vetted with that.
Well,
Rubric.
there's some that say no, like listservs and direct emails. So are those not?
Yeah, so
They
those are
don't
not
follow.
vetted. That would be the person who sent the email out. They don't go through that vetting process except for the person who would have sent it.
Okay, because those are some of the areas that were the biggest problems.
We
So I
had
don't
some
know
discussions
how you
about the
did that.
practicality of, how to make this work and still be able to get our work done. And this is what the committee has come up with. I believe it passed the committee unanimously as we sent it on. So we felt after much discussion that this was a practical way to deal with the problem. And then if things come up in the future, we can certainly go back and take another look at it. But we need to have a framework in place, move forward, see what data we get, and then we can go from there.
Thank you. Director Thronson or Deputy Superintendent Norman?
Yes, just to answer that question, part of the question within that is a list service, usually something someone signs up for, and then there's also an email list, and that's something that someone creates to send to a direct group of people. So I'm not sure which part of your question you're asking for to be vetted, because with a listserv, there's certain parameters of who can sign up for a listserv and who can't. So some of the things are protected because we don't want vendors to have access to certain emails, because then we get vendor requests that come in and just populate through. And so some of those emails, people have said that they would like to remain private, so we wouldn't release an email list to everyone when some of those emails are private.
Thank you. We have a motion on the board that the board approves the resource vetting process, draft 1. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, do we have that? Thank you. Thank you, Chair Hansen. I think that completes our standards and assessment. Did you have any others?
Nope, those are all the items we have on our list this month. Thank you.
Great, thank you.